Imagine a place that feels like a gentle embrace during the day, a sanctuary where sunlight streams through colored glass, painting the walls with hope. But as the sun dips below the horizon, that same place begins to feel different. What happens when your safe place, the spot meant for calm and a connection to God, becomes somewhere you avoid when it gets dark? In Agua Clara, Brazil, a quiet town surrounded by fields and forests, the people in town ask themselves this question. Life here moves at a gentle pace, and the church stands at the heart of it all, a symbol of comfort and tradition. It wasn't because they were scared of bad guys or worried about crime. Instead, there was a quiet, shared feeling, an unspoken understanding that the church in the middle of their town needed to be left alone at night. It was as if the building itself asked for solitude after sunset. So, as dusk settled in, they started locking the doors of the Church of Our Lady of Peace every evening, not out of panic or fear, but out of respect for a small mysterious change they all felt in the air. It was a ritual, almost sacred in itself. The air felt different when the sun went down, thicker, almost charged. The quiet became watchful, as if the church itself was holding its breath. The community paid attention, honoring the invisible boundary that night brought. This is a story about respecting what you can't see, about the mysteries that linger in the spaces we think we know best. It's about trusting what everyone in the group knows, even if no one can quite explain it. A shared wisdom that binds a community together. And above all, it's about having the bravery to set limits, even with holy things. Sometimes the most sacred act is knowing when to step back and let the night have its peace. Agua Clara is a town where life moves with the sun, not with the clock. Here, the day begins with the first golden rays slipping over the rooftops, and the gentle sounds of roosters and distant laughter echo through the narrow streets. Stone streets twist between colorful houses, each one painted in faded blues, yellows and pinks, a patchwork of memories and family stories. Neighbors greet each other by name, and the scent of fresh bread drifts from open windows. In the very center, the church stands, its whitewashed walls and tall doors, a familiar sight to every resident. The bells ring out not just for Mass, but for every birth, wedding, and farewell, marking the rhythm of the town's life. For many years, the church was like the town's living room, a place of comfort and connection. Women gathered in the cool shade of its walls, sharing whispered prayers and stories, sometimes about lost loved ones, sometimes about hopes for their children. Donna Maria, the oldest in the group, remembers when she first came here as a young bride, seeking advice from the women who became her friends. Its open doors showed trust and faith. Locking it was something no one would have ever thought of. The church was a safe haven, a place where even strangers could find shelter from a sudden rainstorm or a moment of quiet in the middle of a busy day. Before the quiet talk started, the church was always there, welcoming everyone at any time. On warm evenings, families would gather on the steps, sharing stories as the sky faded from orange to deep blue. The church lights glowed like a beacon, promising safety and belonging. That certainty, the feeling that the church would always be open, always safe, would soon be quietly, deeply questioned. And for Agua Clara, everything would begin to change. The change snuck in quietly, first as strange sounds after dark. At first it was easy to dismiss, a gust of wind, a loose shutter, the old bones of the church settling for the night. But soon the noises grew stranger, more insistent, as if the building itself was trying to speak. Not the usual creaks, but a low hum, a faraway singing group, and the sound of furniture being dragged that no one could see. Some nights the singing seemed almost joyful, other times it was mournful, echoing through the empty nave. Neighbors closest to the church felt it deep down. Donna Marisa, who lived across the square, said she woke each night with her heart pounding, certain she'd heard footsteps on the stones outside. Others whispered of cold drafts and the feeling of being watched, even with doors locked tight. Animals felt it too. Dogs stayed away from the steps, cats walked in wide circles, birds flew away when it got dark. Even the horses refused to be tied near the churchyard, and the stray dogs that once slept on the warm stones now kept their distance, tails low. The people of Agua Clara understood these signs. In small towns, you learn to trust the warnings of animals and the wisdom of elders. The oldest among them remembered stories from their own childhoods, tales of places that changed after dark, and the dangers of ignoring such omens. When animals get uneasy, you pay attention. A small worry spread. Mothers kept their children indoors. Fathers double-checked locks, and every night more windows glowed with the soft light of candles burning late. Evening walks stopped. Talks got quiet when anyone mentioned the church. Even the bravest, who once laughed at superstition, now found themselves glancing over their shoulders as dusk settled in. There was no clear danger, just a deep feeling that the church after dark was no longer for living people. It was as if the building belonged to something else now, something that waited for the sun to set. The peace of Our Lady of Peace was disturbed, and no one could say why. Even Father Antonio, who had served the parish for decades, found himself lingering at the door, reluctant to be the last to leave. The town listened and waited. Every night, Agua Clara held its breath, wondering what might come next, and whether the church would ever feel safe again. It was the women who first spoke about the uneasy feeling. Maria, who lived just across the narrow lane from the church, remembers the first night she felt it. A chill that crept in as the sun dipped behind the trees, making her pause at her window, heart beating a little faster. Being so close to the church meant they were the first to notice the coldness, the way the air seemed to shift as dusk settled in. Donna Celeste, the oldest among them, would say she could feel the church watching, as if the walls themselves held secrets. The feeling of being watched was strongest in the aisles, where shadows stretched long and silent. One evening, Anna lingered a moment too long and swore she heard footsteps behind her, soft, deliberate, but when she turned, there was only the echo of her own fear. The urge to leave before night came grew stronger with each passing week. They would gather their things, glancing at the fading light, and hurry home, doors closing softly behind them. In quiet talks around kitchen tables, they shared stories, strange sounds in the rafters, animals restless and uneasy, dogs barking at nothing, cats refusing to cross the churchyard after dark. Sometimes, in the morning, they found odd marks in the dust, footprints too large or too small, shapes that made no sense, as if something had wandered through while the town slept. Their gut feelings were trusted. In Agua Clara, a woman's intuition was as good as any evidence. Donna Celeste's voice carried weight, and when she spoke, the others listened. They didn't need proof. Their shared wisdom became a quiet agreement, passed from one to another in glances and whispered words. The church, they decided, was asking to be left alone after dark. The women listened, and in time so did everyone else. Some say it was fear, others say it was respect. But for the women of Agua Clara, it was simply knowing when to trust what you feel, even if you can't explain it. And so as night fell, the church stood silent and empty, and the community gathered in kitchens and doorways, listening to the women who had always known how to listen first. In the absence of a resident priest, the little church became a place shaped by the hands and hearts of its people. Each evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, the community gathered in the soft glow of twilight, guided by their own wisdom and quiet rituals. The idea to lock the church doors came up naturally, not from fear, but from care. It was a gentle suggestion spoken in the hush of evening as neighbors lingered in the square, sharing stories and worries. Sophia said it first, her voice soft but steady. If it doesn't feel right, maybe no one should be there at night. Her words hung in the air, met with nods and murmurs of understanding. The church, after all, was sacred, and the night brought with it a sense of the unknown. The women went to Sor Jorge, the church's caretaker, and simply told him how they felt. He listened, his eyes reflecting both the weight of tradition and the tenderness of their concern. That evening, Sir Jorge moved with quiet purpose. He closed the heavy doors, feeling the cool wood beneath his palms, and turned the iron key with a deliberate, almost ceremonial motion. The click of the lock echoed softly, a new sound in the old building. The sound of the lock was new, but it brought peace, a quiet agreement to respect the mystery, not to fight it. Inside, the church seemed to exhale, settling into the calm of night, its secrets safe for another day. Outside, the women and Sir Jorge stood together, feeling the weight of their decision and the comfort it brought. A new tradition was born, woven from respect, care, and the quiet courage to listen to their hearts. And so, each night, as the key turned and the doors closed, the village found a little more peace, trusting in the wisdom of their own gentle hands. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the church doors closed for the night, a hush would settle over Agua Clara. But this silence was never empty. Instead, faith quietly moved into the homes of Agua Clara, carried on the evening air, woven into the fabric of daily life. The tradition of the evening rosary, once echoing through the main church hall, now found new life in living rooms where children played at the feet of their elders, and the scent of home-cooked meals lingered in the air. Here, hands joined in prayer bridged generations, making connections stronger and creating new safe places. Each night, a different family would open their doors, hosting prayers and sharing stories, sometimes about the old days when the church was the only place for worship, and sometimes about hopes for the future. The fireplace, once just a source of warmth, became a holy spot, its glow mingling with candlelight, casting gentle shadows on icons and family photos. Worship became a warm, shared act. The women of Agua Clara organized everything, arranging chairs, lighting candles, and making sure everyone felt welcome. They included everyone, from the youngest to the oldest, and became the spiritual leaders of this new tradition. Their voices guided the prayers, their hands held the community together, and their stories kept the faith alive. The real church was now the community itself, neighbors greeting each other with warmth, sharing food and laughter after prayers, and watching over one another as night fell. Faith was alive in every home, a patchwork of prayers and candlelight shining through the night. By moving their prayers from the church to their hearths, they kept the fire of faith burning safely and brightly, turning every home into a sanctuary and every night into a celebration of togetherness and hope. In the heart of Agua Clara, as the sun dips below the horizon and the world grows quiet, a subtle wisdom settles over the village. This is a place where stories are passed down in whispers, and where the line between intuition and fact is often blurred by the gentle hush of evening. Agua Clara's story teaches us a lesson about trusting our gut feelings more than just facts. Here, the community has learned to respect the quiet signals that life offers, the subtle shift in the wind, the uneasy silence, the shared glance that says more than words ever could. The women of Agua Clara, often the first to sense when something is amiss, found their worries not dismissed, but welcomed. Their voices, shaped by years of watching and waiting, became the heartbeat of the village's response. The men listened, not out of obligation, but out of respect for the wisdom that comes from truly paying attention. Together they responded as one, united by a sense of shared responsibility and trust. Locking the church was not about fear, but about balance, about honoring the sacredness of a place that sometimes needs to rest, just as people do. In the stillness, the church breathes, holding the community's hopes and worries in its quiet embrace. Their decision was an act of harmony, a sign of the quiet power of everyone knowing something together. In that moment, the village moved as one, guided not by fear but by a deep, collective understanding. Sometimes the deepest wisdom is simply trusting what you feel in your bones. In Agua Clara, that quiet knowing is what keeps the community safe, connected and at peace, night after night. In Agua Clara, the tradition of locking the church at night is more than a routine. It is a living memory shaped by decades of whispered stories and careful hands. Each morning, as the first rays of sunlight spill over the rooftops, the church doors swing open, welcoming the faithful and the curious alike. And as dusk settles, the doors close with a gentle finality, a ritual that has become woven into the very fabric of the town's identity. For generations, stories have been shared on benches and in courtyards, tales of mysterious footsteps, of prayers answered, and of the night's quiet power. These accounts are passed down not with fear, but with reverence, a lesson in care, in humility, and in respect for what lies beyond our understanding. The church itself seems to breathe with the town, content in its role, alive with laughter and song by day, filled with the warmth of community and the echoes of shared faith. And when night falls, it is honored with silence, a sacred hush that settles over pews and altars as if the building itself is resting. The locked doors are not a barrier, but a gentle promise, a way of keeping the mysteries of the night at bay while holding the community's trust. Each lock, each touch, is a symbol of faith and wisdom, an act of love for the past and hope for the future. Agua Clara's history is one of togetherness, of intuition and resilience, of neighbors who look out for one another, and of a church that stands as their silent witness. In the quiet, they find courage, the courage to listen to old stories, to trust in tradition, and to honor the unknown with gentle care. The story of Agua Clara's locked church is more than a simple tale. It's a gentle lesson, quietly echoing through the streets of this small town and far beyond. It reminds us that it's okay to set boundaries, even with things we hold very special. Sometimes, especially with those things. Sometimes the most faithful thing to do is to step back, to give space, to let peace settle in. In Agua Clara, the women understood that rest is sacred too. The women of Agua Clara showed that real strength comes from quiet agreement and gentle, firm action. Their decision was not made in anger, but in unity and care for their community. Their story asks us to listen to our own quiet feelings, to respect what needs rest, and to honor the spaces, both physical and emotional, that require protection. Let us remember their lesson. Sometimes the most important act of faith is knowing when to close the door. It's an act of trust, believing that what is precious will remain, even as we rest. In that quiet, both the holy place and our own souls can find healing peace until morning comes again. And perhaps in the future, others will remember the courage of Agua Clara's women, choosing rest, choosing boundaries, and trusting that faith can be found not only in open doors, but in the wisdom to close them when needed. Their story lingers, a quiet invitation for all of us to reflect, to care for what we love, and to find strength in gentle choices, today and in the days yet to come.